we've won 2 championships there, but more so, we've set the global standard for what a women's professional sports team can be and how successful it can be. And, the fact that you don't have to be a niche product marketed to, just women and young girls. This is high caliber professional soccer, and, look what can happen if you do it right. It's been a model not just nationally but internationally, and really had a global impact. And I'm as proud of that in many ways as anything.
From the studios of KINK Radio, it's the Portland 50, a podcast series about the people who dreamt, built, and championed the innovation, growth, and uniqueness of Portland.
The Portland 50 series is brought to you by Jaguar Land Rover Portland. One company, 2 iconic brands. Jaguar Land Rover Portland is a Don Rasmussen company, the legendary Portland institution serving our community since 1950. I'm your host, Peggy LaPointe. Today, I talk with Merritt Paulson, owner and CEO of the Portland Timbers and the Portland Thorns.
There was a personal aspect to it. It wasn't just sports or the sports opportunity. I don't believe in absentee ownership, and I was going to be operating the teams. So it had to be a city that I wanted to live in, that my wife, almost more importantly, wanted to live in as well. So there had to be a personal connection. We weren't necessarily geographically constrained, but again, there aren't that many spots we really wanted to put down roots either.
Right.
So I think add that to the fact that this was the biggest metropolitan area at the time with or one of the biggest, with only one major league sports team.
Mm-hmm.
There's a metric which is basically population per major league sports team, and Portland was top 5 in the country.
Right.
When you looked at it that way, and it's a great sports market. Rip City and support the Ducks have, and it's Soccer City, USA. So, I came into this thing with a pretty soccer-centric view, although, when you look at the press conference, it was clearly focused on AAA baseball, which, when we did the deal in 2007 for the Beavers, we attributed all but $100,000 of the value to the Beavers. I mean, USL soccer teams weren't really worth anything. But, when I got to the point where I was ready to do my own thing, and I had the sports focus, Don Garber, the commissioner of Major League Soccer, was our first meeting, and that was back in 2005. We were actually looking at San Jose in the Bay Area at that point in time, and it didn't end up doing the deal. But the fact that we had the stadium, which was a jack of many trades and master of none, but in the heart of downtown Portland, and had the ability to sort of move back to its original rectangular configuration. I knew it would take work. I knew there was risk, but I was really comfortable with the market, and I was comfortable with the downside if we weren't able to make it work out. So, no, I'm not a Portland person, but there was that personal aspect, and then I really liked the sports opportunity.
Well, you and your wife are outdoor enthusiasts, so Portland certainly fit into that part of your life. Big time. Yeah. I am not a Portland native either, so.
Yeah. Well, I think, 10 plus years in, I'm officially a Portlander.
Yeah, I think you can earn your badge right there.
I've earned my stripes by
I don't think anyone in this town is going to kick you out. Let's just put it that way.
I may come at things with a little bit. It's funny, they always say, a lot of people will say you bring an East Coast mentality. I'm a Chicago native, so I'm actually not an East Coast guy. I was living in Manhattan when this happened, but Chicago's where I was raised.
So that was 2007 when you bought the 2 teams, and then in 2010 you sold the Beavers. I mean, there had to have been a lot of thought process, and what was going on behind the scenes that it made sense to sell the Beavers?
It really was, we didn't get the deal done for the baseball stadium. So we originally had an agreement with the mayor and Randy Leonard, who really were the champions among the city council for me at that point of the deal. to renovate at the time PGE Park, now Providence Park, for a soccer-specific setup that would meet Major League Soccer requirements, and build a baseball stadium at Memorial Coliseum, which was a problem for the city, still is a problem for the city. They still haven't come up with the right solution. It would have, activated the Rose Quarter in a way that I think they'd originally anticipated with a complimentary season to the Blazers, and we could have put in a 8,000 or 9,000 seat baseball park there, and it worked really well. And you had the parking and the infrastructure.
Everything's there. Yeah,
and then Sam had his issue right after we did that deal, and when we faced opposition, at the end of the day, there just wasn't the political support, to push that one through, and I had to make the decision which of the two was I going to get behind, and that was a really easy decision. It wasn't easy to be a guy who moved any team outside of the city. That was never my goal. I don't want to minimize that, and I took a little bit of shrapnel in the process, but I think most people who were objective and followed the process closely understood that was a decision that was forced on me, and we tried to make the Beavers work in Beaverton after that, and so I actually thought even without that we had the Lentz thing, which was just politics. I mean, I never believed that Lentz was going to be the solution, but we had to go down that route for a couple of reasons, but Beaverton was the backup plan to Memorial Coliseum, but again, that one failed as well.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. We sit 10 years later, and Memorial, things haven't changed around there. I think it's going to take a lot if we do bring Major League Baseball to town. But in the meantime, going back to that time period, that was about a year later when Portland was awarded a franchise for MLS soccer. How much work goes behind the scenes to get a franchise, particularly in MLS?
There was definitely work. Now it's even more work and rigorous. I mean, there's a real competition going on for expansion markets. It's been a lot of people at that table, and there's a process, very formal process, application process now they're going through the league, and there's a lot more interest than there is room for expansion teams. I mean, we're going to be capping the league at 28 teams, and who knows if we ever get to, maybe we'll get to 30 or so, but there's not many more slots, and soccer's exploded. At that point, we had 3 teams that were vying for 2 expansion spots, Montreal, Vancouver, and us, and it was very close, actually, that Montreal got it rather than us. I think the league was pretty set on Vancouver, and they just had Seattle, and they were worried about all these teams in the Pacific Northwest, and for a variety of reasons, whether it was serendipity or whatever, the fates had it. There were some negotiations in Montreal that off-tracked their 2011 chances, and we came in with Vancouver.
Did it help that we had that stadium in place and other structures already in place? Was that
it helped that we got the deal to meet MLS requirements and make a real soccer specific stadium. That didn't help. I mean, that was a prerequisite. We wouldn't have been able to do it without that. So the whole expansion award was contingent on the deal that we got done, the public-private partnership we did with the city, which in retrospect I think is one of the great examples of a successful public-private partnership. I mean, even if you don't like soccer, you can't look at the impact the Timbers and the Thorns have had on this city, what we've done in the community, the way it's activated our neighborhood, and there are a lot of obstructionists who are screaming, "Oh, it really is going to cost the taxpayers money, and this is just an end around." No, actually, it didn't. It hasn't cost the taxpayers one dime. Yeah. It was the spectator fund that was used a bit to help us out of the gate, and that's a fund that can only be used for the city's spectator venues. And this thing's just been a win-win. I mean, I think when you look back on this, and I always said there's going to be anything big, there's going to be opposition.
Absolutely.
And the city spends a ton more money on a lot of other things that aren't so public. But at the time, we were in the middle of a recession, pretty significant recession.
Yep.
This was ultimately spending on an entertainment option, which didn't play well. My father was at the time the Secretary of Treasury and dealing with TARP and the bailout, and so there were a lot of optics that were challenging, to say the least, in getting this thing through. And it's a credit to Sam and to Randy and Dan Salzman and the rest of the commissioners that we were, we ultimately got this thing through, and the city's really, really benefited.
It has. And, we talked a little bit before the microphones came on. My family's not a soccer-centric family. And you don't have to be a soccer-centric person to appreciate the excitement that the Timbers bring. I have so many friends who are season ticket holders. And, on the day of the games, I see folks with their scarves on getting ready to take the bus down to the games. And it's exciting regardless of whether or not you're at the game or not. It's nice to see people to come together and the community come together, and it's been fun watching it from my perspective as well.
It's become part of the fabric of the city.
Absolutely.
And we always knew it was going to be big with young Portland. Mm-hmm. More exciting to me even as some of my older friends. I'm about to turn 45, but I've got friends who are in their late 50s and even 60 out here or so, and watching them become soccer fans, because that was always the demographic that, hey, forget about those folks. They're strictly American folks. They've got an anti-soccer bent, and they may or may not have had that, but, certainly they've gotten sucked into the excitement that is the Timbers. And, it's not just, hey, that's cool. They know when we're in the playoffs who's on yellow card accumulation and, may miss the next game, and they're asking me about trades that we've made. Why'd you trade Darlington Nagbe? They're upset. Yeah. I mean, so they're really active fans at this point, which is a net positive. Not always a great thing for me in cocktail conversation.
Right.
But on the whole, it's a big positive.
So the inaugural season was 2011, 2012, and placed sixth in the Western Conference. That's a pretty good way to start.
Yeah, we had an okay year.
Yeah.
Our first year out of the gate as an expansion team, especially as a team coming in with another team, which Seattle didn't do. They came in by themselves.
Right. And then just a few years later, 2013, first place in the Western Conference, playoff. I mean, that's pretty good.
Yeah, well, and obviously the championship
in 2015.
So we've done well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we can always do better. For sure, and we've got some other goals, and we've missed the playoffs a couple times, and
that hurts.
And we want to perform in CONCACAF Champions League, but we will. But I think we've set a pretty decent standard.
Yes, yeah. 6-7 years in, you set yourself up pretty successfully.
And
a new coach
and then we
this
hadn't
season.
anticipated, and we'll get back to Timbers, but we didn't anticipate doing the Thorns. When we came out, and we've won 2 championships there, but more so, we've set the global standard for what a women's professional sports team can be, and how successful it can be, and the fact that you don't have to be a niche product marketed to just women and young girls. This is high caliber professional soccer, and look what can happen if you do it right. It's been a model not just nationally but internationally, and really had a global impact. And I'm as proud of that in many ways as anything.
Well, and as you said, it's universally enjoyed. I have some friends who have a boy and a girl, and their whole family will go to Timbers games and Thorns games. But having said that, it sure is neat seeing friends of mine who have daughters who take their daughters to the game, and these girls have role models in the Thorns.
100%.
They play soccer every Saturday, and then they get to go see these women compete and win, and I mean, that's pretty fantastic.
It's been great.
Yeah.
It really has.
Absolutely. You've got a new coach this season, And you're in, as we speak, you're in the preseason going on in Tucson right now. How's that going?
I just got back from Tucson yesterday. Terrific. I took Gio and the rest of the coaches and Gavin out to dinner last night. So I guess the night before last. But anyway, close enough. But it's going great with a lot of new pieces. I mean, obviously starting with a new coach, which is a big change, third coach we've had in Major League Soccer. And, there's a really good vibe around the team right now. A lot of new players and really talented players. I mean, we put a big injection of capital into the roster league-wide with our new rules this year. And I think that's this year, the 2018 season, we're going to see the biggest quality jump we've ever seen from year to year in terms of product on the pitch. And I think here in Portland, we're going to benefit from that as much as anyone. I think we've made some really good moves.
Well, my friends are already buzzing about it.
Good. Your friends are smart.
You're listening to KINK's Portland 50 series. I'll continue my conversation with Merritt Paulson in a moment, but I wanted to thank our sponsor. The Portland 50 series is presented by Jaguar Land Rover Portland. One company, two iconic brands. Jaguar Land Rover Portland is a Don Rasmussen company, the legendary Portland institution serving our community since 1950. Now back to my conversation with Merritt Paulson, owner and CEO of the Portland Timbers and the Portland Thorns.
So I mentioned I'm from Wisconsin, and when my boys were born, I signed them up to be season ticket holders for the Packers, because that's what you do.
Yep.
And the waiting list is, I don't know, they're 70,000 in. How many years before that waiting list for the Timbers is that high? Because you're at 13,000, I think, right now.
15,000.
15,000.
And at our renewal rate, which is 90, high 98s, low 99%. I mean, it's something like it's 70 or 80 years statistically for somebody. So that's why we're doing the expansion.
Yep, you got the expansion going on.
So that's going to change that dynamic a little bit. And ultimately, it gets us to 25,000 capacity from 21,000. But there'll be people who are existing season ticket holders that want to move to the new side. There'll be other spaces that open up where they were. There's going to be opportunity for a lot of people on the waiting list to get in, and I'm enthused about that. And I think that 25,000 is a pretty good long-term capacity as well.
I remember, wasn't it when the season, when the team first started and season tickets were available? I remember seeing a huge line of folks waiting to get those season tickets in the rain. Were there some overnight too?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think we had a process to go through season tickets that there was certainly physical queuing that took place. I mean, we had the lines to get pictures taken in the photo booth.
Yes,
that might be what you're remembering.
That's what I'm thinking about. Yeah.
With the axes and that kind of stuff, and obviously the lines that people who literally camp out overnight, waiting to get in before every game, but. I think that's what you're thinking.
That's probably what I'm thinking about.
The long lines when we did the photo booth, and that was actually 2015. We had the 2011 booth that we did downtown and became such an iconic deal. People were making those shots that their social media avatars, and then we did it again in 2015 for the 5-year anniversary.
Yeah,
that ended up being the year that we won MLS Cup.
That was a great marketing piece.
Yeah, and we'll do it again in 5 years as well. So we'll revisit it that'll be something we keep going back.
I want to turn to something else, the sustainability aspect of what's going on over there, because that's one of my passions and a lot of what I'm trying to do here at the station. And you guys have done, you got a lot going on. You've got the just regular recycling, but also cooking oil and electronics, and you've got composting at the stadium kitchens, and you're using green cleaning supplies, and I think I saw that good, untouched food is being donated. The rest is being composted, and a number of other initiatives.
There's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
We have all the lights are triggered by motion,
yep.
and we have low water system that's actually very efficient and works quite well. I mean, we were, I think, a LEED Silver building, which is tough for without being a new build. So to do that as a renovation with an original 26 facility.
Yeah. That's an old building to be able to do all of those things, which is fantastic. Now, did a lot of that come from you, or are you hearing this from your fans or the folks that you have around you, that this was important to do?
Well, I think it is important to our fans in the community, but I mean, this happens to be a passionate, an area where I'm passionate. So we were going to do that regardless. I mean, we could be in Dallas, Texas, and we'd be doing. And if I was running the team, we'd be doing. Not the Texans are so
right. Nothing against
they
Texans.
Kind of are, but we'd be doing the stuff. I mean, that's just part of being a good community citizen.
That's
I
awesome.
think so, and we've got to set an example there. And there's more stuff we're looking at. I mean, I'd like to do. We've looked hard at reusable cups, or composted cups, and there's pretty significant cost piece to some of that. Those initiatives, but those are initiatives we're going to continue to take a close look at.
All right, I want to go back to the game because I am a sports fan, and so I appreciate the different things that the teams do that are just unique and that are fun and that get people engaged, and it's something that you talk about when you leave the stadium. And one of them is the Timbers Army. I mean, that's a passionate group of folks. How did the Timbers Army come to be, and how rowdy are those guys?
Well, the Timbers Army existed prior to my arrival, and so this Portland was Soccer City, USA, when the seeds were sown back in 1975 with the NASL Timbers that launched and existed through the very early 80s, and then the league went under. But that's when Pele played in Portland, and Timber Jim became an icon of the team, and with his chainsaw and all that great stuff. And then we had soccer go through a number of different iterations here, and an indoor league, and ultimately the USL. But the TA existed when I got here. It was much smaller, and crowds were much smaller. But the folks who started the Timbers Army, I think the official Timbers Army, and I'm going to screw this up. I mean that was all in the early part of the 2000 era USL Timbers, and I know some of the individuals that are still really active today were the folks that started it. I know these guys by their user handles, on Twitter, like Nevitz, was one of the guys. But I mean, if you want to be in the Army, you already are in the Army, as they're saying, and it's there's an ethos of spread the love, and so sort of all the aggro crazy stuff that you might have as a perception, which is true. We've got the electric environment, and that's ultimately driven by them. They're extremely active in the community.
Absolutely.
They're doing their Fields for All initiative right now, among a host of other efforts, and the volunteerism ethos is just off the charts in the Timbers Army. So that's the stuff you don't see. I mean, when I came in, there was an adversarial relationship between the front office and the Timbers Army, and they were trying to stamp out profanity and this chant and that chant, and kind of stay away from those guys. And soccer was very tangential to what the core business was, and that is an area that I changed. So we opened up communications lines more than they had been. The fact that I think at that point I don't still do the regular monthly meetings with the TA, although I just did one. I'll do them periodically as needed. But at that point, I was doing the meetings myself. So to actually have an owner sitting in there, and and like any relationship, it's driven by communication. And we needed to ensure that the communication lines were open, and we weren't always going to agree, but we were always going to respect each other. And there have been some fits and starts, and I've blown up at them on Twitter and a couple times, and it hasn't always been perfect, but by and large, it's been a really functional relationship.
Well, and when I said crazy, I meant in a good way, of course.
Yes, of course.
But there is a lot of, you brought that up, there is a lot of volunteerism, not just with the Timbers Army, but you see Timber Joey now out in the community, and Timbers players planting trees and in the schools and so on, and that's awesome to see as well. I mean, you've become a fabric of the community.
Yeah, and our community outreach efforts are pretty recognized, not just in Major League Soccer, but all professional sports as being best in class. I mean, what we've done with Stand Together Week is pretty unique, and that's primarily the week. Activities every single day. You were talking about seeing people out planting trees, but players, coaches, Timbers Army, everybody side by side, and thousands of people over the course of 1 week. But we've done, the stuff we did with Atticus, back in 2015, the boy who was dealing with some significant health issues, and we set up a game against the Timbers and his youth team, and Timbers Army showed up for like a 2:00 or noon weekday game, and they had thousands of people chanting, and we did the scoreboard. That was pretty amazing stuff as well.
That was neat to see.
So we've done a lot of great stuff in the community, and again, something that I'm extremely proud of.
I want to go back to Timber Joey, because he does something when the team scores, cuts the cookie. It's got the big log, got his chainsaw, and cuts the cookie, gives it to the player that scores the goal. What do these players do with it? How many do they end up racking up at the end of the season, and what do they do with all these cookies?
Everybody, has got something different. And goalies get them when they, have a clean sheet as well. So there have been players who have had them lacquered and made them into furniture. Some of them give them back to the team so we can do, donations. Some of them just keep them stacked up by their locker, and it kind of is sort of a reminder to everybody in the locker room who's scoring the goals.
Right.
Adi does that. So, it's player by player, but it's an awesome tradition. It's resonated globally. Started with Timber Jim before Timber Joey, and that's one I wish I could take some credit for. But it's certainly the coolest goal scoring tradition.
It's pretty cool
in soccer. Anywhere, and in England, that's how everybody knows the Timbers. So the guy with the chainsaw,
nice,
and that's we've got a pretty decent brand recognition, name recognition, relative to other American clubs over there. I think largely because of that.
Yeah, it's very visual. It's fun. It's everyone loves it.
Yeah.
So no retired jerseys yet.
Well, we do have retired jerseys. We have the
you have the Ring of Honor.
We have the Ring of Honor, which are the retired.
Is that the same thing?
They don't soccer. You don't retire numbers. So there's just your number 9 is got a meaning in soccer beyond like what it would have. There's typically soccer players' numbers don't go past. In the low 30s. You're not just, it's not like the NFL where you've got a lot
NBA.
more people. And we actually have a guy who's number 99 now, and there's really no rules, but there's significance to certain numbers as well. Number 10, is the playmaker on the team, the center attacking midfielder, creative midfielder. The number 9 is your, you talk about we're going to sign a 9. That's a center forward. But that player often wants to wear the number 9 to significant. And there's for the 11 guys on the field. There's a number that signifies their position. Mm-hmm. So retiring numbers, but we do put people in the Ring of Honor.
And you've got 5. Timber Jim is one of them.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And have you put anybody in the Ring of Honor since 2011?
We haven't put a modern era Portland Timber in the Ring of Honor yet.
But somebody from a number of years ago, I did see that.
Yes. We'll have some decisions to make. I can promise you Diego Valeri will be in the Ring of Honor. Yeah. So we've got to think about the appropriate time to start making some of those decisions. We've only been an MLS team now for this will be our eighth year.
Exactly. And you are in your 8th year, as we mentioned earlier. Guys are in Tucson for the preseason, and you've got your kickoff number of games away because of the construction going on. Home opener for the Thorns is the 15th, and for the Timbers is the 14th. I get that right?
Sounds right.
Sounds about right.
I'm focused on our opener at LA Galaxy in a couple weeks on Sunday night.
Yeah, that's coming up real quick.
More focused on that than playing Minnesota in April. And the Thorns again open up, I think, right around the same time.
Right around the same time.
Yeah.
And
Thorns open on the road too, though. They play North Carolina.
I saw that for a couple of matches as well.
Yeah.
2018 season. What do you, besides of course the championship? What are you looking forward to for the team?
Winning. I mean, it's another way of saying no. I mean, I think seeing how the new coach, brings his style and new culture to the team in the locker room. I think we're going to get more out of some players on the team, especially some of the international Latin players are really going to benefit by having him here. And I think anytime you've got a new coach in a slightly new system, watching the evolution there is really going to be interesting. So that is what I'm looking for on the Timbers side. Thorns, it's going to be the challenge of, repeating. I mean, it's always tough the year after you win a championship, and we've had some big changes there as well. So I'm looking forward to that.
Well, I'm looking forward to watching from the outside, and maybe I can talk
a game this year.
Well, I was just going to say maybe I can talk one of my friends into inviting me to a game. Thank you. I appreciate you coming in. I know this is a busy time, but loved having you in and learning more about the team.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me for my conversation with Merritt Paulson. If you've missed any of the previous podcasts, you can find them at our website at KINK.FM. Be sure to like and subscribe to the Portland 50 podcast wherever you're listening. The Portland 50 is a podcast series celebrating KINK's 50th anniversary, and it's about the people who dreamt, built, and championed the innovation, growth, and uniqueness of Portland. The series is presented by Jaguar Land Rover Portland. One company, two iconic brands. Jaguar Land Rover Portland is a Don Rasmussen company, the legendary Portland institution serving our community since 1950.